again, everybody. Welcome back. Let's get out printed tissues, and by all means, check in the notes below and you will see links to how I made some of these printed tissue papers. I love using them. You could just as easily get rubber stamps and do everything that way and add paint on top. But the reason why I like to do printed tissues is you can play around with the placement of it over top of your background and decide where you want it before you place it and glue it down. If you were to just paint all those kinds of images over top, it'd be a little harder to undo what you did if you didn't like it. So I'm going to start again, as I've done on a previous recent video, doing an overall background texture. And I like this stamp, I like the random dots, and I am basically trying to, again, mimic what we've done before, doing an overall background texture. I'm changing the pressure that I add so that it's strong in some places and recedes further back in other areas. But that's what I'm trying to gain here. I've brought out a lot of fun stamps. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the names of most of them because I don't have that information anymore. These are from my stamp stash from quite a while ago, and I've lost all the information on them. Whenever I can, you know, I do try to put in the link in my information below. I do try to tell you what I use and where you can find it, but I can't always do that, so bear with me. But by all means, use anything you've got. I'm not trying to dictate what stamps you need to use. I'm trying to show you what you could do with the stamps that you might already have. So the purpose here is to have some smudgy dot-like background ones, and then now I'm doing these accent ones, which hopefully will sit on the surface of my artwork a little more. But again, when I do my work, it's all intuitive. I never know at the end what I'm going to look like with my work. And I never know if these stamps and background images show up later or not. It's definitely always intuitive. But my whole purpose of these soul journal books, art journal books, is that it is to be used for play, experimentation, exploring, trying things out. I don't always do perfect works of art in it. It is only for play and experimenting. That's why it's an art journal. If I wanted to have perfection all the time, I would get canvases out and work on it diligently that way. But the whole purpose of these books is it's just paper. Just have fun. So what I'm trying to do here is disguise that center seam down the middle of the page. Even though it's there, it's obvious it's there, I'm trying to make an illusion with the stamps so that you see a busyness of stamps everywhere, and it draws the eye away from the crease of the book and more throughout the whole spread with the images that I put down. But again, please keep in mind that this is experimenting. So I've got some printed tissues that I had actually painted these on tissue before. The green ones are very transparent, as you can see. The blue one's more opaque because I did put white paint on the tissue first and then the blue. And I did that on purpose so that when I place the blue down, it's more opaque. I like the variety. I do love that this green, and I think this green will probably end up being my accent, but I do love that it goes down very strong and bright, but it reveals the shapes and images below. I do love working with layers. And so anyway, today's lesson, keep in mind, is that this is the reason why I labeled it like I did in the thumbnail is you never know what you're going to get. And the whole idea is to experiment, put things down, don't overthink it. And then eventually about halfway through, I start to decide and the images start to reveal themselves, and it starts to tell me, if that sounds funny, but it does. The patterns and things that emerge eventually start to tell me what the page wants to be. And I can never determine it. And so you have to have trust. And you're going to see this is a fairly long video, and it's long because I came to a point that I really liked it, but that was way too early. And I thought, you know, it was too pale. As much as I loved it, I want this art journal book, as you've seen on the previous 7 spreads. They're very bold and strong in color, and I quite like the idea of keeping that as my theme throughout this book, is keeping it strong in color. So when you see that I get somewhere and it looks like, and I will let you know at that point today where I could have easily left it as it was, I always take you a step further. So don't, even though you might like things the way they are at that point, bear with me, because I'm trying to show you more techniques all the time and trying to show you where you can take it further. And again, it's just paper. This is not masterpieces of art here. It's just my art journal book. It's for fun. That's why I call it Art Journal Fun. And it's to explore, play, and learn. And you can use this book for years to come as inspiration. You might open a page and go, wow, I love the combination of those colors. I'm going to do that again. Or I like the backgrounds that I did. Like, it's all for reference if you want. So that's the reason why my book is the way it is. And again, I'm happy when it takes you in, it gives you ideas to go in different directions than me. That's great if that happens. It means you're learning and you're coming into your own preferences, which is wonderful. These are my timeouts each day for me, strictly for me. And I do love intuitive play here. I don't like to over contrive. I'm really enjoying this blue one that I put down because it's got very random shapes. And I would never have thought of that if I was to just get a paintbrush and blue paint and start scribbling away on the page. I prefer having tissues where I can move it around and say, that's really fun. I'm just making sure I lift it and get extra paint. Because there's white on the background behind that blue, it's a little harder to stick down to the page. So I need always more matte medium when it's got an opaque, very painterly print on it. Really liking how that shape is. I like the shapes of the stamps. I like everything so far. We'll see where it goes. So, you could go to the dollar store and pick out some lovely colors of not printed, of tissue papers with all the colors that they have, and just tear them up and use them as color blocking. It's a great reference. You don't have to do any work. It's already colored for you. So there's an idea for you. And even though I have a lot of struggle today on this one, it takes us to somewhere where I'm very pleased at the end. You may like it midway, but I was pleased with the outcome at the very end. So stick with me. We'll have fun. I love these colors, the blue, the green, the black, and the white. I really, really enjoy this combination. I'm taking out right now a beehive kind of, a honeycomb kind of pattern, and I'm purposely taking the middle part. And the reason why is because I like how it fades in and out from dark to light. I really like how that creates movement. And what I'm doing here again is breaking up the patterns and shapes and sizes of things. So at this point, it doesn't take much longer before I think, I quite like the balance and the effect of this page already as it is. I absolutely do. And if you want, you could pause, take a photo of this and say, you know what, I prefer it like that. It's going to be completely different at the end. Here's another pattern, completely different size and shapes. Kind of a strong hit of black. Again, I like to mix things up. So I'm just tearing away. You've seen I sometimes get a wet, watery paintbrush to tear away borders of the tissue paper that I don't want. In this case, I'm showing you how you can randomly just tear it away as well. The whole idea is I want a random edge of the tissue. so that when I glue it down, it's not a strong ridge of paper that you see. But I am enjoying the image that I've got here. It's quite fun. It's completely different than the rest. So I've got a lot of background shapes and textures, and I've got a variety of foreground shapes and textures. So I'm just, like I say, if I was to paint that on, number one, I wouldn't have thought to paint that. And I like how distressed and grainy some of those images are. I couldn't paint it like that. That came from the gel plate printing. So that's why I love to do gel plate printing. Usually I do my printing of tissues on one day and put them away and save them. And then I save them for when I'm doing my art journal pages. Here's another one I had done before, and it's a softer bit of the same blue, but very soft, delicate layer of paint, and it's in dots, bubbles. So I'm just, again, outlining with a wet paintbrush so that I can randomly tear away a rough edge around all those dots. The water was a little bit greenish, but that's okay. To try to do this with clear water. It's just that I was too lazy to get another jar of clear water. I think I had a second jar on the right there, which I dipped the next time. Yeah, that's cleaner water there. Because I try not to get any extra color on the tissue, because that will change where I put it down on the paper. So here we go. I've got some dots. I've got another shape there that I had in my stash. And I've got another print here that was made on my gel plate. And that's when I did do-it-yourself stamps, which was a lot of fun. There's a video link for that as well. And I'm just trying to get more of that blue to put around the page. And who knows, I might paint over it at some point, or I might not. But the whole idea right now is to get down a lot of busyness as a background, as an underpainting, if you will. And I've decided that this green is probably going to be my accent, my strong contrast. Accent to me is, if you were to squint your eyes and sort of look, it would be the one color that stands out the brightest. And that's probably what I'm going to stick with throughout this spread. And I'm going to have blue, black, and white be more spread throughout. So again, I'm just doing background images here. I'm always putting a protective sheet underneath the page, especially when I'm gluing things down with matte medium. I don't want any of that matte medium to glue the pages together. So if you put a protective plastic sheet underneath, you can protect your pages. And I'm overlapping, as you see, I'm overlapping some of the textures below. I'm doing that on purpose. I like to create layers. I like to create a variety of pattern. And I like to create a variety of shapes and sizes of those shapes. I find if an abstract is really, really busy and everything is the same size and busy all over, that kind of hurts my eyes. Everybody's different, but my preference is I like to do a variety of shapes and sizes and layers of depth. Now I'm putting this blue over top. It didn't have white on the tissue first, so you can see that that blue is semi-transparent, so it's still revealing some of the stamps below. And that's just another layer of blue that starts to disappear into the background. The other blue on the bottom left is more in the foreground, visually that is. And I decided I didn't want all of that there, and while it was still wet, and I didn't mind that pulled away, so while it's still wet with the matte medium, you can use your fingernail to scrape away anything you don't want. I didn't really love how that interfered with the green, so that's why I took some of that away. Got this other interesting shape. So please, if you like the videos, please share and make comments, please, if you will, because I love reading the comments, and especially in today's video, I'm going to end up letting you know that this is one option right here that I love as it is. I like the balance. I like the energy of it. I quite like it. Let's call this A, and at the very end, let's call that B. And you can decide yourself if you like the version A or the version B. It's totally It's very subjective. I'm very happy with this as it is, but again, the video is too short. I want to show you more. So what I'm going to do is a glaze of semi-transparent white. So I've got semi-opaque white in that little tube, and I'm going to do a big coating all over the spread of matte medium first. And I don't like this brush. It's getting really stiff, and it will leave bristle stroke marks when I brush it down. So I'm getting a brand new brush that's got really nice soft fibers. And that way when I paint down onto the surface, even if it is just matte medium that dries clear, I really don't want to have a lot of texture from the bristles of the brush. So I'm going to go all over the page, the spread, both pages, with this matte medium. And it also is a good way of protecting all of the paper, because when I glued those images down, I didn't get matte medium everywhere. So this ensures that I get matte medium all over and protects the paper. And now while it's still wet, I'm doing this semi-opaque white, and once it hits the matte medium, it becomes even more transparent. And I'm just going to put that all over and then dab away where I don't want it to be so white. And as you can see, what's happening is this white, this cloudy, filmy white, is kind of shooting a lot of the background images even further into the back. It's making them more subtle and subdued. Love playing with that. This spread is really going to change a lot. So get a cup of coffee and sit down and watch the show. So it's got a lot of overall busyness, but by doing this, I tame that. And while I'm doing all this, my mind's starting to think about where I can go, because this is already a good start. But I don't overthink it. So this is a point where I squint my eyes and then I can see what pops out. And I want some of this green to pop out even more forward. So I'm thinking about balance as well with the black and the shapes, the black and the white and the colors. I'm always thinking about balance. Balance of color, balance of shapes, balance of sizes, balance of placement. I thought while it was still wet and semi-opaque in white, I would do a toothpick scraping. But I didn't end up liking that. I felt like that ends up getting painted over. Normally I do that, and when I glaze over top later, the darker color from the glaze sits in all those crevices where I scraped. But I didn't want that. I found that the background was busy enough, and I didn't need to draw. I don't like to overdo the focal points. I like to have busy places and places, soft places for your eye to land and rest. And I just felt like that was making things a little too complicated. And while it's still wet as well, I can spray water everywhere and use a paper towel to dab away. Because what I want to do is bring forward more of that green. I want it to pop forward. And more of the black from that pattern that I glued down. And before it gets soaked into that inner crease, I use the edge of the paper towel to soak up any water that's in the middle there, because that could go through to the back. So I like that I sprayed water and subdued it a little. It toned it down a little, wasn't quite as drastic. So I like the detail of the black that's still showing through there. It may or may not last, but right now I do like that. I like how some of that green is bright and some of it got covered over a bit. And then I thought, you know what, I've got that blue shape there, that rope kind of shape, and I thought maybe I'll get some of my white paint that's quite opaque and paint that, fill that in a little bit, because it was very busy in the background, and that blue tissue print, rope style tissue print that I put down, it was fighting with that background, and I wanted it, and you can see already the result. It shows up a little bit better now. And I'm cleaning up some of the blue in the bottom there too. Again, this is going to change. And I thought I'll try the same thing there. I'm sort of bringing forward some of these white shapes. But I didn't end up liking that, so it won't last. But I'm showing you options. This is something you could do, is put some white semi opaque white in a tube and use that as a paintbrush. But I didn't like it. It was fighting with all the other shapes. Sometimes too much is too much. Sometimes less is more. And I'm trying to make some of those black honeycomb shapes disappear a little bit, fade in and out even more. I highly recommend you get a set. These dispensers, I've got one for black and one for white. They're fine liner dispensers, and one of them's even finer than the other. And they're great to put black and white and contrast colors in because they're so fine that you can use them as a paintbrush. So what I'm doing is showing you close up that while it was wet, that white that I painted down bled past the blue rope, and I wanted to bring some of that back. So a Q-tip would have been really handy there as well. Now I'm just adding a little more opaque white on the top. I'm trying to purposely make that top right area very calm and flat, not a lot of texture, just for variety, because it sits next to that black chain of shapes, and I want that to be the focal point. I thought I'd use this fine liner to make some shapes out of white, but again, I found, even though I'm showing you can use it to do that, I know full well while it's still wet, I'm going to take those away because I have beautiful shapes down already, and I'm confusing the situation by adding more white shapes like that. It takes away from what I'm trying to show. So I will wipe that back. I thought I'd bring out a shape that was there too, but I just didn't like it. But everything's still very, very wet, so have no fear. And up there, I thought in 3 places I would do a shape up there, but you can see yourself, I think. You'll agree that it's way too busy. So I'm highlighting it to show you what you can do. You could use a Posca pen as well, but they're even more permanent. So I like to use these fine liner tubes. So while it's still wet, I just thought I'm just going to bring that all back. I'm going to smudge it around with my finger because that makes it really a good smudgy look. And dabbing it here and there. I find sometimes brushes make it too defined. So I wanted sort of a cloudy look, so I used my fingers and then rubbed some of that away. So that was just a lesson on what not to do, but I was showing you that it is an option on another spread, but just not this spread. I'm trying to make some of that right and some of the top left slightly less busy. I like patterns everywhere, but I like I say, I like some flat, easy places for your eye to land as well. And I thought I didn't really want that big black patch in the bottom right there, so I filled it in with white just to make it less heavy of a black look, and that might change. And what I'm trying to do there is take that chain of black shapes. I'm calling it a chain because it looks like a chain. And I'm trying to make it dark on the bottom and slowly receding to the distance up at the top there where my fingers are now. And so it fades out of focus. Strong on the bottom, fading out, eventually going lighter. And that's the same thing that's happening with the honeycomb shapes as well. They're fading in and out. So that's kind of a theme I'm doing here. The images are fading in and out in that direction and in this direction. And later on, much later on, I can always decide if I need to enhance more of that black, but this is good enough for now. And I decided to subdue a little bit of that scribbly stamp area as well. Just trying to quieten the page a bit. So I like that better. It's not quite as busy. Even though my abstracts don't really have an obvious visual image, if you will, I like to give the viewer an idea that it's trying to say what it wants to be. In this case, it's fading in and out of shapes. I'm covering up a little bit more. I'm creating another shape there in white, but what I'm doing is covering up a little bit of those stripes in the background. Now, I don't mind that that's a new shape because it is so subtle. So I let it get good and dry. Here's a close-up so far. And what I like to do with I do it with canvases, but I do it with the book as well. If you turn it upside down and turn it in different directions, it's very easy to point out with your eye, for your eye to see the balance and where things aren't quite balanced. In this case, I felt like that area there needed more weight. It needed something there because there's not enough happening down there. It wasn't balanced. So I thought I'll get a stamp out now that I've got white over there and bring back a little bit of pattern because I lost it with the work I had done there. And and again, I'm doing some of it heavy and some of it light, but I'm just trying to draw the eye to the bottom left of the spread because it wasn't doing that before. And I've also decided I want to redo some of the stripes from this stamp and spread it even further across the bottom. And that will definitely help bring the eye all the way to the bottom left of this spread. I pressed really hard to get it good and dark, and you can see now that the flow around the page is much more balanced. And again, some of you might like it just like it is and leave it, but I keep going. I've decided I might play around with the idea of this lighter blue. It's all from the same blue originally in the original high flow acrylic transparent blue, but it was mixed with a bit of white, so it makes it a little more opaque, but also paler. And again, as I put in the note there, this is the time where you just don't be afraid to experiment. It's just paper. It's acrylic paint. You can paint over. And if I didn't like a lot of this, I could actually be really bold and get a heavier consistency white paint over everything and start fresh. But I'm doing things in layers. I just thought it'd be nice to bring a little more blue around the page. And again, this looks kind of nice. I like the colors. I think this looks quite lovely, but it just feels flat. There's not enough dimension. I want more depth of color and more layers. So I'm going to play more. I'm going to put a little bit blue more, bring the eye right over to the bottom right corner. Because there's a lot of smudgy blue all around the spread otherwise. I'm speeding this up so that you don't get bored. You can slow it down if you like, but basically even though I'm going fast here, you can see basically what I'm doing. I'm moving this, I'm using this blue, this paler blue that's fairly opaque, and I'm just smudging it around a good part of the spread. Pushing things back a layer and leaving some things in the foreground. Adding a little bit of white and dabbing back with paper towel to make it a little less blue and a little bit more smudgy, if you will. When I'm doing this, I'm thinking about what I'm doing, but I'm not thinking about my day. I am just so in my zone, in my zone of mindfulness that I just thoroughly love it. So now I've decided I'm getting the blue right out of the bottle. All of these blues came from that bottle of blue, by the way. It's just a matter of how much white was mixed with it. But now I'm doing full strength, high flow acrylic, transparent blue, and I'm smudging it around to see where I can take this. Because I do like to bring in It's not another color, it's the same blue, but it's just deeper, and the value is brighter and stronger. And I thought, I'm not going to keep it, but I want to show you and remind you. You've seen me do it in other spreads where you put it really heavy and then you could spray with water and watch it flow and drip down the page. But I wanted to use the opportunity to show you what you could do. And the reason why I didn't like to keep it is because I felt like it was interfering with my printed tissues that I put over top. I'm still playing to see if it could turn into something. But whenever I try something, I know pretty quickly if it works or if it doesn't. I'm encouraging some of that dark blue to flow down, making big blue dribble marks, I guess. And then I thought if I wipe away and dab away, I will isolate them into stripes. But I don't like that. It fights with my black chain. So while I'm able, I'm just smearing that around. And the whole point was just to try it. If I didn't like that, I could spray water all over and wipe it all off, and I'd be back where I was. So I'm moving the eye around the page now with that color of blue. And down to the right as well. And I'm going to cover up that white dot. So I like that I covered that with white, and it's easy to glaze. This is glazing. It's easy to glaze over that white. And the reason why I like glazing is it's semi-transparent, it's very transparent. And when you have an overlap of the bright green with the blue, it becomes more of a turquoise, which is quite interesting. So even though I haven't added a third color, I've created a third color there in a very textured way. But I'm trying to leave some of this bright green and wiping away so that I've got 3 locations, 1, 2, and 3 of that contrast, which is my accent. Now, if you have, before it gets dry, and it only works if you paint with a really dark color like I did, and then when you place the textured paper towel over it and press hard, it reveals this texture. It lifts off the paint and leaves a texture, and I like that. So if I was to add texture with other shapes, it would have been too busy, but this allows the spread to have a variety of textures, and also it brought in that third color, that turquoise. I like that. I really like that spot up there. And I don't think that was fighting with the rest of the spread. Now I'm adding a little bit more up there, and I'll wipe away. I still want my green to be the accent up there. So I'm wiping away some of it before it dries. Oh, so what I want to do now, since I enjoyed that texture, is I'm going to add some dark blue and then do the tissue print again so that I create a pattern. And you're better to use the palm of your hand than use your fingers. So I'm really happy with that. And I've still revealed the bright green underneath. So that's fun. This is the green I used, yellow green, high flow acrylic. And I'm just getting right out of the bottle. You can see how green it is when it comes out of the bottle, but as soon as you spread it around, it becomes brighter. And I'm just trying to make this pop forward. Love it. Look at how it blends with that turquoise pattern now, because that turquoise pattern is part of this green. And that ended up being too dark, so I will dab that back. And I thought while I'm at it, rather than have, when I do have my accent usually in 3 locations, I like them all to be different shapes and sizes. So I thought I would just move up the page a little bit and bring out a bit of shape from that chain. That is so brilliant. I like that. It's slightly going into turquoise there, which doesn't hurt. It balances with the top left. And there I'm going to dab away because I want to keep the brilliance of that green. And now I'm purposely putting dark blue down because I want to put the tissue down again and make a print, an imprint of texture. Again, that only works if you use a strong, bold color. So I'm grabbing a clean piece of paper towel, and I'm going to use my palm to press down. So you're lifting the paint off and leaving back in all the grooves from the print, from the pattern of the towel. And I want to do a little bit more. And again, you have to go strong with the color or it won't work. Now, if you press too hard, you lift too much of the paint back. So we'll soon see. That's pretty. I like that. And again, you could leave the spread as it is now. We could call this the second option. But I'm going to go further because I want this book to be full of bright, bold colors and not so much white. But there is a pretty good balance already happening. I mean, I could be happy with that as it is. So I'm going to put some of this semi-opaque blue in the bottom left and the top right. And it's okay that it covers some of that black. It's only semi-opaque. So I'm pretty much making 3 shades of blue throughout this spread. They're all the same blue, but they're different depths, different values, and where they become texture or where they hit the green, they become turquoise. So it's very interesting. I really like to have movement and energy on the page. And the more I do things like this, the more energy it gives. But as much as I'm putting the blue to balance in the top right, to balance the bottom left, I am purposely keeping that fairly flat and not not really full of a lot of texture. And I'm purposely with a little brush guiding it and bringing forward this white shape. This is just mindfulness. While I'm doing it, I'm just doing it. It's just like coloring in a coloring book. You just get lost in what you're doing. I decided I wanted to sort of play around with that shape a little bit. And I'm going to push back some of that striping there as well. I really don't want to take away from that black chain. So that extra shape there in white is another element, but it's subtle. And I thought I'd color in a little bit more of the blue there and just really reveal the shape of the chain and nothing else. A lot of my other spreads in this book haven't been this graphic. I find this very, very graphic, very bold. But I like to do different things. I don't want to be classified as doing the same kind of look over and over and over. I like to change and learn and grow. And now I want to bring out, so I brought out lighter blue over there. Now I'm bringing out the deeper blue, fresh from the bottle. Again, creating movement and energy and flow. So in doing that, I am covering up some of the paper towel imprint texture that I had there, but that's okay. So it's coming a little bit more like I wanted, even though I didn't know what I wanted. Again, at this point, usually in my work, I've got a pretty good idea of where I need to still bring it out. Love that texture. Love how the things below are still revealed. I'm happy with this so far. Just turning it around to see again. Still a little bit too flat on the top right, but we'll see where we go. I decided that where I went, oh, so I've got a tissue print here that I'm going to put down, and I'm showing you there left and right along the sides of the paper from top to bottom. There seems to be a border going down, so I want to move this print around so that I reveal a little bit of border on the left. And I like that background texture, so I'm going to take away some of this print and reveal that texture below. I don't want to lose it. I worked too hard to get it there, so I want to keep it. So I'm just wetting along the perimeter of the shapes I want to keep and the shapes I want to tear away on that tissue. And this is the easiest way to do it. What I'm trying to do is bring more white into the spread, but it won't stay white. I'm going to glaze it. But what I want to do is cover some of that busyness on the bottom half of the left page, because I just want to bring out a new shape that's got bigger. You can see the white on the right has one shape, but it's quite big. And then the paper textures are quite fine and detailed. This becomes a new size and shape and pattern. And even though I'm gluing it down white, I will glaze over it so that it's not going to stay completely white, but it does cover up and become a new focal point. And I think that the left side needed a focal point more than it had. I don't want that part there covering up my honeycomb, so I'm going to get rid of some of that. I like that honeycomb in the middle of the page. So I hope you can see already that it was a wise thing to do to bring more of that white and more of the shapes, opaque shapes, to cover up some of that background. And what I want to do is make sure I don't cover up those stripes on the bottom there. So I'm going to place the plastic sheets below the page because I'm going to do a lot of matte medium gluing over here. I'm going to put the matte medium all over the general area where I'm going to place that tissue. Probably have a little too much there, but that's okay. There's quite a bit of white paint on that tissue, so as I said before, the more white paint on the tissue, the more I have to add extra matte medium for it to really glue down. So I want to reveal, and I'm going to cut away that bottom edge because I want to sort of expose all that stripe along the bottom. And I could do the same along the left part of the tissue there because you can see there's a real edge. But I'm going to show you another way to deal with that in a random way, which I quite like to do. So I'm going to glue this down first with lots of matte medium, pressing hard, always going from the middle outward and around all the way so that you don't fold the tissue. It takes practice, but you get the hang of it. What's fun is wherever there isn't any white paint, those hollowed out scribble lines right where my fingers are there from the tissue reveal the pattern below, and I like that pattern showing through like that. It makes it really interesting. You couldn't paint lines like that because they're undulating between blue and green, turquoise, and pattern. So while it's still wet, you can use your fingernails to scrape away the border of that tissue that was there in a random way. So I like that. And again, the top half of that tissue that I put on there up above, it reveals below interesting patterns and shapes, and then it gets covered with the white shapes. I like that. And I think that flow of that scribbling joins with the honeycomb quite nicely. So the eye moves around. I decided I wanted to add a little bit more, cover up that area that I had put more of the stamps. So even though I added more stamps with dots there, I decided I didn't want them, so it's okay. I'm going to cover them up. Another way of doing that would be just to get some white paint and paint over it, but I quite like the idea of bringing this pattern from this tissue print further over. And I'm making sure that I do a little more tearing away on the right because I don't want that straight line. I don't want any straight lines right now because it's a very wobbly, rounded kind of odd shapes. So the straight edge of the paper wouldn't match. That's going to be fun. I didn't want to cover up that honeycomb. I think that's very much saying something in the spread and the direction of the honeycomb. But this flows nicely with it. And it might look like a lot of white too, but again, I'm going to glaze over that so it won't stay all white. A lot more paint, matte medium. Let's glue this down. And again, see how those squiggle lines that were clear from the white paint, they reveal the colors below. I think that's fun. I really, really enjoy how these white tissue prints I use completely alter the painting that you put them over. It just takes it to a whole new level. So I'm going to do a blue glaze. I made sure I blow dried that in between. I'm going to use a lid with a lot of water, and then I'm going to pour that blue right from the bottle and start off very, very pale, very light. It's too light, so I'm going to have to add more paint, but it's better than starting off too dark. What my purpose is I want to reveal a lot of the white, but I want it to be undulating and end up morphing into from white to blue. You'll see as I add more. It's again too light, so at that point I'm gradually going darker and darker with full strength. But full strength going on, by the time I smudge it around where it hits the water, it still goes pale. So I'm enjoying the flow of the white around the page now, around the spread, but there's still a little too much white on the bottom left, so you'll see that I will continually and gradually make that morph from white to disappearing into more blue. And this creates movement, creates depth, creates layers. Notice how that yellow-green is still my contrast. Even though the black and the white are quite strong and pop, the green pops even more. If you squint, the first thing you'd probably see popping forward would be the green, so that is still my contrast. I decided that's a little too white, that shape, so I want to glaze it a little, but it's not glazing enough. I'm just throwing that shape backwards a bit, and I don't mind overlapping a little bit of that chain where the white was and creating a shading again of the blue disappearing to white on the top of the chain. This playfulness is the part I enjoy, deciding at this point what to bring forward and what to put into the back. It's my favorite stage of the work. And starting off light, you can always go darker and darker as you need. So I like how it's shading in and out, flowing. That white is ebbing and flowing throughout the page. And the flow of blue is working a lot. So I've got a flow of white and an equal flow of blue moving around the spread. And I love that pattern from the tissue print. Now I'm going to, I blow dried it, by the way, in between. And now I've got some liquid high flow black with a very fine brand new brush, and I'm going to bring forth some of these stripes. So this is sort of the final stage. Even though the green is my accent, by going over top and enhancing these black areas makes them pop and makes them shoot to the foreground. The green is still my contrast and my predominant accent, but the black pops forward with it. And I don't want to do it to all the black areas on the page. I want to just be very selective of what kind of flow and pattern I want the eye to take. I want the eye to flow around over the black areas first, and then notice the rest of the page. So I will not do them all. I've got the black coming forward in 2 places and now a third. And I don't want to do the whole chain there. I'm only going to fan it out to being less black at the top here. And I will smudge that a little bit to make it blend. So I wanted it to be black and then disappear. So that's kind of the theme, if anything, on this spread, is that there's an ebb and a flow of everything, really. You should be able to look at an abstract and have your eye move all around the spread in a pattern, and then have calm places to rest and busy places to appreciate. This is almost done. I'm really, really happy that I didn't leave it that first stage A way back that I showed you. And you might have preferred that. I don't mind in the comments if you tell me, do you prefer A or do you prefer B here at the end? I like to hear what you like. Even though I can't plan anything, I do things for myself. I do like the feedback. I like to see what I did and what people like the most. And again, I'm making an ebb of flow of these black marks here, but they're disappearing as well. They're disappearing at each edge and strong and bold in the middle. I'm only doing 3 on that side. So there you go, ebbing and flowing of all the detail. So there it is, dried and finished. I like it a lot. The things I want to point out always in my work is a balance of color, layers and depth, and busy and calm places. Also, I like a variety of shapes and a variety of sizes of those shapes, and I like a variety of the textures, and you got all of this fulfilled in this spread. I hope you like it. I hope you've learned from it. I like to tell you what I think about when I do things and how you learn about balance and flow. So stick with me. I won't be doing blue next time. I'll do something completely different. I'm always doing something new, and I really enjoy doing this for you. I hope to see you soon. Have a great day.